there, 574, turn right turn heading 240.
This is every controller's nightmare.
Richmond 41.
You have two aircraft mere seconds away from a potential mid-air collision. If you cannot even communicate with that aircraft and help them out.
It happened on January 31st at Pittsburgh International Airport.
At the blink of an eye, everything in the radar room shut off.
USA 922, contact approach.
Just boom, it's out.
4028 300.
We lost radios, radar, lights, telephone.
It's just the worst situation I've ever seen as an air traffic controller.
A tree falls on an electric line, triggering a power outage. And for 6 minutes, the busiest, safest air traffic control system in the world isn't much of a system at all. No electricity, no telephones, controllers relying on emergency radios and the power of prayer.
It's very time critical when you lose everything and you have 35 airplanes in your airspace.
Kevin Holland,
The room goes quiet.
Dale Gorley,
Everybody sort of stood up.
and Johnny Edwards are controllers.
You can't talk to your aircraft. You can't see them. You can't see each other.
Because they're worried about their jobs, they've asked us to make it clear they're speaking for their union, not the FAA.
They stood over the scopes to gain a mental picture of exactly where the airplanes were.
People found lighters. Eventually, we found a flashlight.
It's trying to get enough light so we could get to the backup radios and reestablish some communications with the air crews.
Within seconds of the blackout, how far did you have to go? Dale Gorley went in search of an unlikely backup, a payphone.
Right here. It just popped into my head that possibly that phone might be working. Thank God it was working.
Gorley called the union office at the closest air traffic control center, Cleveland.
He was fairly frantic.
Bill Liberty answered.
You could tell in his tone of voice that he was somewhat desperate.
I just kind of shouted into the phone, get down to the radar room, let them know that we lost everything, stopped the airplanes, and hung up.
All we know is that for some reason they're not taking any more airplanes, and we can't even communicate with them and find out why.
But the official line from the FAA makes the whole incident seem like barely a blip on the radar screen. Weather was clear, backup radios worked.
When the public hears that there was no radar, no telephones, no electricity, no backup, it sounds pretty dicey. In your view, was it?
No.
FAA Regional Manager John Walker.
In fact, there were 12 aircraft that were lined up for 2 runways. All 12 landed. It was a huge success.
I can't speak for what the FAA would say, but I was there.
I believe safety was definitely compromised. Planes got too close together.
We were able to account for 6 pairs of aircraft that lost separation.
Lost separation. They came too close. 48 Hours has obtained an internal FAA memo documenting how 12 planes violated the 3-mile minimum separation rule. 8 of the planes were on final approach and flew much too close to one another. In one case, only a mile apart. Still another jet actually overtook a prop plane approaching the same runway. And then there were 2 planes traveling at about 200 miles per hour, heading right into each other.
One airplane is heading south, and the other airplane is heading north. One is descending from 7,000 to 4,000, and one airplane is level at 5,000. So at some point, if you're not talking to those 2 airplanes, they have a potential of getting together.
Translation, mid-air collision. It wasn't until the planes already crossed paths that Edwards says he got through to one of the pilots on backup radio.
That's very unsettling, very unsettling.
If it would have been a overcast day or a rainy day or a snowy day, it could have been very serious.
5 minutes into the blackout, Cleveland is still shut off from the Pittsburgh Tower. Can't talk with the pilots, but can see on radar yet another crisis in the making.
For one of our controllers, he observed 2 of these aircraft in Pittsburgh's airspace at the same altitude, 8,000 feet, and they were aimed directly at each other. Right at that instant, the landline communications between our facilities came online, and that was the first call they heard from our facility in roughly 6 minutes.
And that call was what?
That call was, you have these 2 aircraft coming together, and they're seconds from impact, and you need to descend one of these aircraft now.
Was that just luck that the system kicked in at that moment?
That was pure luck.
I think a lot more than luck played a role. Maybe some divine intervention. I'd say we had somebody watching out for us that day.
6 minutes, 12 planes flying so close, it could be one for the record books.
But the flying public never heard about it. only ones.
Any problems in Pittsburgh up in the skies?
Well, not that I'm aware of.
David Hinson, the FAA's top administrator, didn't even know about it.
Why was the public not told about 6 losses of separation up in the sky?
Well, I'm not aware that that was the case, and if we didn't tell them, we should have.
It took weeks of prodding by 48 hours to finally get the FAA to admit that, yes, there were problems that morning over Pittsburgh. Still, to this day, the agency downplays the blackout, insisting safety was never compromised. But could the whole incident have been avoided?
They elected not to provide a second power feed into the building.
These FAA technicians, also speaking for their union, say the problem at Pittsburgh is that all critical equipment was linked to one system. When that failed, everything went.
We feel if the second power feed would have been available on January 31st, there would not have been a system outage.
What happened in Pittsburgh, can it happen at other control towers now?
Yes.
I would say Pittsburgh is probably more of the norm out there than the exception in the FAA for these type of problems.
Northwest 27th.
In fact, of more than 500 FAA facilities nationwide, only about 30 have a second power feed. Last year alone, there were major blackouts in Oakland, Houston, and New York. In all, the FAA reported more than 22,000 failures of not only power, but radar, communications, and computers.
This is the 9020E.
Why? Well, take a look at this room-sized computer. It has less memory than a laptop and is so old, replacement parts are no longer made. And cutbacks have reduced the number of controllers and maintenance people keeping current equipment in shape.
We have the safest system for the flying public in the world here, statistically.
That's correct.
So are these outages, in a sense, being overblown or whatever because the union has certain things on its agenda that it wants to get?
Oh, good heavens, no.
Is there 577?
We do have identified problems. I want them fixed. I want them fixed before somebody gets hurt.
Pittsburgh now has emergency lights and a new independent phone line. The FAA also says the tower will get its second power feed. The agency says changes at other facilities will be made on a case-by-case basis.
Do you trust the equipment that you use every day?
No.
I don't trust it.
Am I confident that it will not go out again? No.
Radar contact, maintain 5,000.
There's an accident waiting to happen.
Contact Cleveland Center 120.6.
Just yesterday, Pittsburgh's airport got another jolt. The tower's primary radar system was down for more than 5 hours. This on the heels of a brief total radar failure last Sunday. After yesterday's incident, 7 air controllers said they needed time off because of stress.